All right, let's bring in our next Orioles-related guest, Dan Connolly, joining the show again. Writes for Sportsnaut, sportsnaut.com, and you can follow him at Dan Connolly 2016. Dan, great to see you, and I'll say this because it's all truth on this show. You were the guest I was most excited to have on this week, and that's before the Corbin Burnes news. You have a long history with the Orioles ownership group, and this, I have to imagine, is a joyous time because you cover this team for years, and now you're probably going to get a little more transparency from this team. So what are your thoughts on this new era in Baltimore?
Well, first of all, you have to have more transparency, right? I mean, this is about as opaque as possible during these last 6 years with John Angelos. So I think no matter what, they're going to have more transparency. David Rubenstein is a guy who knows media. He's been in media. He understands all of this. So I do expect more transparency. And I do expect a difference just overall in how the fans view this ownership.
This is a good thing, right, Dan?
Oh, it's a real good thing.
Is this good? Is this great? Is this like we're celebrating like, we won the World Series? Good. I mean, how big of a step is this from John Angelos and what he did and Peter Angelos to now this new group with Cal Ripken and Rubenstein and all these other people?
Well, first of all, I think if you look at it just on the surface, it's a tremendous situation for Orioles fans. You're talking about 3 different billionaires part of this, not even including Cal Ripken Jr., who, as you guys know, he brings a whole cachet of himself. But if you look at the 3 billionaires that are there, they're all worth a lot more than the Angelos family was. And I think that says, Rubenstein's from Baltimore. He's been an Orioles fan all of his life. He says he wants to win. He wants to get this a World Series championship. Have not been in a World Series since 1983, guys. So, I mean, that is a big deal. Now, the only thing that I say, and I've cautioned this in my most recent piece, you got to be careful what you wish for, too, because you don't know how he's going to handle things, and you don't know how meddling this ownership may be. They obviously have a very good front office set up with Mike Elias and his guys. In 1993, when Peter Angelos ended up, buying for $173 million through a bankruptcy hearing, he was a local guy. Everybody was thrilled. The first couple of years were a tremendous honeymoon for him, and then things went sour. So you got to kind of be, careful what you wish for. But I think right now, especially where this team is on the field, I think it is a tremendous joy for Orioles fans to have a new ownership.
I want to go back to the conversation you had with Angelos a little bit about selling. Heard you got yelled at by him one time too as well. So talk a little bit about that and what you really got out of it when you were talking to him.
Yeah, we had a press conference in January of 2023, which was for supposedly it was about a scholarship situation the Orioles were doing with inner city youth, a really good program. But he hadn't spoken to us like I think maybe 2 or 3 times in 4 years, John Angelo. So he calls it on Martin Luther King Day. It's an inner city scholarship program, and after they do their little piece, the first 2 questions, one was about the lease, which has now been signed. The Camden Yards lease. And then my second question was, ironically, guys, what is your commitment to this city and to this team 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 years down the road? Are the Angelos family going to be selling, or are they still interested in being part of this long term? And that's where he just kind of went on a deranged rant about how it was an inappropriate time to ask a question at his own press conference, which he called, and told us that he was going to show us the financials, the books of the Orioles, so we could see what he's talking about. Again, that never came to fruition. He doubled down on it in March of last year. Never came to fruition. He has been caught many times saying something and not following through. And the most recent was this past December, guys, when he basically told the governor of Maryland while they were negotiating this lease that the team was not for sale, when the rumors with Rubenstein first appeared. And a month later, it's for sale and they're selling. So I think that, he showed what he was or how he handled things during that press conference.
Yeah, Dan, this dude is ruthless. And I think the biggest part of this story is that he is now out of not just Baltimore sports, but all of baseball. So how much of a win do you think this is for baseball? Because really you have 30 human beings who are the gatekeepers of a sport. And I'm going to give benefit of the doubt and glass half full to the new ownership group. And also, like you mentioned, the bar is set so low. There's 20 other things you've written about if they go obviously to your Twitter and to to Sportsnaut to read about how well documented you have provided all Orioles fans and baseball fans with how much of a disaster John Angelos has been as owner, suspending the broadcaster, taking attention away from the team's success last year by saying he's not going to re-sign anyone. It's on and on. So for the game of baseball, these are the people that make decisions on content, on entertainment, on everything involved in the game. How much of a win is this?
It's a big win. I mean, we have to caution, he's going to have 30-some% of the team. He will still be a minority owner. His family will still be a minority owner, at least until his father passes. His father's 94, been incapacitated for 6 years or so. So as soon as, he passes and they put it together, the rest of that stake, or at least a large majority of that stake, will then be sold to the Rubenstein group. But he is still going to be part of this on that aspect. He will no longer be the controlling partner, a controlling member, and that's the guy who reports and works with the rest of the owners. And I think that's got to be great. As I wrote recently, I think Rob Manfred probably bought a bunch of champagne and a bunch of ice, waiting for this to happen and not to have to deal with the Angelos family anymore. They sue the Major League Baseball over the Washington Nationals agreement with Masson, the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network. So there's a lot of history there. And I think that Rubenstein is a guy who's really well thought of. So I think my guess is it's going to happen fairly quickly, the approval, because they'll be really happy not only to push aside the Angelos family somewhat, but also to bring in a guy, Rubenstein, who has a lot of money. He's got Michael Bloomberg behind him, for goodness sake, and Cal Ripken. So, I think that this is going to go very quickly, and I think they're going to be very happy. And I think Major League Baseball should be happy, and its fans should be happy, because we're never going to see a salary cap, guys, right? But there should be some type of salary floor, in that the guys who, the owners, people who have these teams, can pay enough or are willing to pay enough to keep the teams, at the very least competitive, if not more. And John Angelos and the Angelos family, they get kudos for hiring Elias and staying out of his way. But the truth of the matter is, they were never going to spend that kind of money. And this group has that money to spend if they want to go out and get a guy. And so I think that's a huge win for the game itself.
Here's a thought. I just thought about this now. Whoa, what a beautiful face that is right there. Are the Orioles done? Are they done now? Is this like, all right, we're bread and butter done, or are they still looking to find other guys?
We just talked to Mike Elias about an hour ago or so, and he said that, right now it looks like they're going to just kind of scan what's going on and maybe bring in some depth pieces, maybe some relief pieces. I think that this is the end for them. Now I think they're 38 on their 40-man, so they do have a couple spots to fill, but they love their offense. They feel like they could do a little bit more in the bullpen, especially with DL Hall gone. But I think rotation-wise, they're set. So as far as big purchases, yeah, I think they're set. I do think that it's possible that they bring in somebody, for minor league depth or whatever, to see what happens, if somebody gets hurt. That's what they were really good at last year, and I think they'll probably go that way again.
All right, you mentioned they were popping champagne because Rob Manfred doesn't have to deal with the Angelos. Should Orioles fans be popping champagne because they made this move for Corbin Burnes? I mean, is this the we're going to put you over the top move for the Orioles to get them not only to the playoffs but deep into the playoffs?
I think it is, assuming he stays healthy. I really do. This team needed two things going into the offseason. It needed to somehow replace Felix Bautista, who had October elbow surgery, and it needed to put a number one guy in this rotation. It's a solid rotation. They have guys coming. They have guys who've done well, but they needed that guy. They needed a guy to throw against, Garrett Cole. They needed a number one to kind of stabilize everything. And this was one of the best guys, not only available, but just in the majors. I'm writing a piece for Sportsnaut today, and honestly, I think this is the biggest trade acquisition for a pitcher the Orioles have made since 1968, when they traded Kurt Blefary, who had been a Rookie of the Year, to Houston for a guy named Mike Cuellar, who basically helped, joined a really good rotation and made it that much better. In trades for the Orioles, this is about as big as they come. You look at maybe in 76 when they traded for Reggie Jackson and a couple others, but as far as getting one guy who can make a difference for 1 year, they couldn't have done better. And Mike Elias told us that this was, he believes that this was the move to really put them in that position.
Okay, how does their rotation line up? Burnes 1, Bradish 2, Grayson Rodriguez 3, and then do you go Means, Kramer? How does it line up? And also to piggyback that, how much faith the Orioles fan have in Craig Kimbrell.
Well, that's a good point. But here, to get your second question first, Craig Kimbrell, he's a potential Hall of Fame closer. He's obviously had ups and downs in the postseason. He's had ups and downs, but if you look at it, really, Yennier Cano pitched really, really, really well for them last year. Cionel Perez has been very good for them for the last 2 years. They could possibly take over this closer duty if it doesn't work out for with Kimbrell. But bringing in Kimbrell takes that pressure off those guys. They don't have to automatically be thrown into it. So I think that even if Kimbrell does it for 2 or 3 months and wears out a little bit or whatever, it still provides them with some experience, provides them with a guy who can do it, who has done it, and maybe takes a little pressure off some of the other guys with the electric arms who maybe go into that. As far as just what the rotation looks like, I think you're right. The only question I have is whether maybe John Means is the number 3 guy to start because he's a left-hander, breaks it up a little bit. And remember, John Means was very, very good when he was healthy. He had 3.6 ERA, 2 different years for the Orioles until he had Tommy John surgery. Came back at the end of last year, should be fully healthy this year, and he can be a 2 or 3 unquestioned, maybe even a number 1 de facto, which he has been in the past for them. And then Grayson Rodriguez, the sky's the limit. So you're talking about those 4 guys in some order, probably the order you suggested. And then Dean Kramer's 5th. They also have Cole Irvin. They also have Tyler Wells, who may now be moved back to the bullpen. But they have other opportunities for guys that can maybe take that 5th spot. But this is so much deeper now with Corbin Burnes atop.
So, Dan, this new ownership group could officially take over in a matter of days with ownership approval maybe next week in Orlando. And, new ownership groups, especially if they're legit, they want to try and make more splashes right from the jump. Now, that's not saying that they're going to do something with the free agent market, but let's say we get settled into the season or into spring training and this group now has control. What would you do if you're them? Would you obviously talk to Adley and Gunnar and maybe even beyond? Like, what other names would you bring up if they're consulting with Mike Elias and company and saying, hey, we've got money to spend. This is one of the lowest payrolls in baseball. The offseason has already, for the most part, passed us. What should we do?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's going to be approved this quickly. You're talking about next week for the meetings. I think they're going to be, the subject is going to be broached. You're going to have a lot of information on it. I think it'll take a little while. I mean, Rubenstein is a known character, known commodity. So I don't think it's going to take as long as maybe it does with other groups, but I don't think it'll be, this week. So I think it will take some time, maybe a couple weeks, maybe 6 weeks, something of that nature. But it will get done. And I just not 100% sure when that's going to be. But to me, the absolute first thing you do is you sit down with Scott Boras, and talk about Gunnar Henderson. You sit down with Adley Rutschman's people, and I mean, you've got Dan Vertleib is his guy, and I think you immediately talk with those guys, with Grayson Rodriguez's people, with Jackson. Boras also represents Jackson Holiday, so with Holiday, and see what you can do. See if you can offer these guys 8-year deals or whatever, get past arbitration and show the fans that, yeah, these are our guys for the future. That's one thing the Orioles have not done much of in the last 20 years. And I think that's essential. This is a really good team. It's a good team on paper. It's a young team. It's a team that really hasn't actually, even with winning 101 games last year, a lot of these guys just played fairly well. They haven't even hit their peaks yet. So imagine the peaks. I think the fans are really excited about that if they keep getting better. But you got to show people that, hey, we want this group around. And that's not something that John Angelos would have been able to do, I don't think, in his mind or financially. And I think that's something that the Rubenstein group should show that they absolutely can do and do soon.
I love that. Hey, last one, historical context. How does this week rank in Baltimore baseball history?
I mean, it's incredible because you're talking about, Angelos, the Angelos family has been with it since 1993, the longest ownership in Orioles franchise history. Obviously, there were some good times. And like I said, you got to give credit to John Angelos and his brother Lou for the hiring of Mike Elias and his people and getting out of the way. But this is an organization that has not done particularly well over the years. Like I said, not since '83 a World Series. The team was really good last year. It was disappointment that they went out in the first round. And so I think that just the ownership sale was huge news and was extremely important. Remember, the Ravens lost on Sunday and everybody was all bummed. And then all of a sudden, boom, the Orioles sell, Angelos sells, everyone's excited. And then, 2 days later, they get one of the best pitchers in baseball coming on a team that's already good. So I think it's got to be up there. I mean, you take away World Series championships and things like that, even the Frank Robinson deal probably wasn't looked at as excitingly by the fans because there's been such a drought now, and I think they're so excited about this particular team.
I can see that smile on Dan's face. It's going to be so fun covering this team now for you, Dan. I'm excited for you. Genuinely so excited. You deserve this. You had to deal with a lot there for a long time, man. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dan. It was awesome having you on. And again, everyone check out Dan's work on sportsnaut.com, and also check out his Twitter. We'll post some of these clips on there too, so you can check those out. Dan, happy week in Baltimore. Talk to you soon, man.
Absolutely, guys. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.